This question has to do with the events of my own life that inspired the writing of the book Streets of Fire. Streets of Fire was first published in 1992. There's a new translation now out in France that I'm very happy about. In terms of the question, the book is set in Birmingham in 1963 during that very hot and violent summer of the civil rights movement. I'm sure most of you have seen the pictures that were recorded in Birmingham during that time. You saw water hoses unleashed on children, police dogs unleashed on children. It was a very violent time in the city. Later, when I became a writer, it seemed to me that this setting would be perfect to write a novel about moral life and about moral choice. And so I created a character, Ben Wellman, who is a policeman in Birmingham during that period. His own moral choices have to be made in a context of great violence and great stress. I saw that stress up close in my youth because honestly, the civil rights movement became the moral test of so many people during that period of their lives. They were under tremendous pressure in one way or another to make a choice for good and against evil. Some did make that right choice, and I saw acts of great courage. Some did not. And I decided to write a book that would deal as much as possible with those events in both the internal play of those events in a person's life and the external events themselves. The second question has to do with how our resistance, which is the theme of this particular meeting in Frontignan, has a place in my book. Actually, it has a central place because what happens in the novel is that this policeman, Ben Wellman, who is living through the events in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, one of the most violent moments within the civil rights movement in the United States during that time. I'm sure, as I said in answer to the other question, that most of you have probably seen those iconic photographs or videos of police dogs and water hoses being set upon really school children. It was a really, really awful time, and the images that were coming out of Birmingham at that time were really awful. You had two forms, at least, of resistance. One was the resistance of the group that was most oppressed during this time, and that is the blacks of the South. I grew up in a completely segregated environment, so I really do know that there was almost no opportunity. There was terrible oppression. It had long been time for a change, and as the Black Rebellion continued and grew, many whites in the South joined it. Many did not, and some opposed it. In my book, it is really the story of a man who begins in one direction, that is to say, just a normal person doing his job, but who becomes cognizant of the historic nature of the events around him and allows himself to be changed by them, as I think many people were. Some, unfortunately, were not, but many people were. And so he finally himself becomes a part of the resistance. I don't even remotely believe that the roman noir, nor any art, or certainly any genre within art, can carry out the enormity of that task. If you were to ask me what I think the roman noir can bring to society at the moment, I think can serve as somewhat of a bulwark against the absolute madness that seems to be gripping people all over the world right now. It's very difficult for me to go on and look at Twitter and look at Facebook and read the kind of absolute nonsense, the absolute madness, the conspiratorial theories that are abroad in the land. It is very, very disturbing to read these things. And so I think roman noir, because it is based on evidence, because it is based on reason, because it is based on the search for truth, because it does not partake in this insanity that we see gripping so many people with their vast conspiratorial theories about the virus, about everything else. I think of roman noir as a bulwark against that kind of anti-intellectualism, that kind of extremism. Roman noir is a work of reason, and in these unreasonable times, I think it can serve to root us, or continue to allow us to be rooted in truth, in evidence, in finding justice in reasonable terms.